Okay, kind of continuing on from my previous video, which was the Super Mario Brothers movie review. I'd hoped to do this in one, but that review ended up being kind of long, so I decided to split it up. But another sort of tangentially related kind of video game movie, kind of game movie, obviously Dungeons and Dragons isn't a video game, but it's been so influential on, pretty much every RPG ever made that it's kind of an honorary video game movie. So this is a film that just came out, and it's written by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, which is kind of a duo who've worked together on Game Night, Horrible Bosses, and of course the MCU Spider-Man films to great success. So this is their crack at Dungeons and Dragons. And you can also think of, John Francis Daly was originally in Freaks and Geeks, where they famously played Dungeons and Dragons in one episode. So you can see he's actually a bona fide fan. Obviously, they had previously attempted to make this into a movie back in the 90s, which counts as horrible. I'm probably never going to watch it, but it just looked really bad. And that was kind of before Lord of the Rings came out and kind of revitalized what a fantasy movie could be. So this is a movie that I don't think people had very many expectations for. I know it had been kind of trapped in development hell for a long time, both because of the pandemic and also because I think a few different writers and creative people were attached at various points. So again, I don't think people really knew what to expect. Again, fortunately, it landed in the laps of this writer-director team who ended up also becoming the directors. I'm not sure if they've directed a movie before. As far as I know, this is their first one, and I think they did a really killer job of putting this film together. One thing that I think is really great about this film is how unexpected the humor aspect is. And you can kind of see this as kind of falling in veins of, Guardians of the Galaxy or any of these other Marvel type movies of rapscallions doing a heist mainly. Or even just looking at the other films that these actors have been in. Chris Pine was in any of those, Star Trek remakes, which if you liked 1 or 3, I think you're definitely going to love this. Michelle Rodriguez has obviously been in a lot of different genre films, Avatar, Resident Evil, Lost. And I think this is a film where she really got a chance to shine. And by the way, I need her workout routine. She was massive and kind of, in a way, I think channeling Vin Diesel. She had this very stoic, tough woman persona. So I thought all that was really great. We have Raisha Jean Page, from Bridgerton. No, he doesn't show his butt in this one, but he does a very nice, interesting counterpoint to Chris Pine. Whereas Chris Pine is very much, the rogue. The character's name is Zank. He's also very stoic and very lawful good or something like that. We have Justice Smith. And I always am this should have been Will Smith's son. No disrespect to Jaden intended, but he's so likable, so charismatic, and I'm really surprised we haven't seen him in even more things. He was great in The Get Down and Detective Pikachu, and I haven't seen Generations yet, but I hear it's very good in that as well. Sophia Little, obviously from the It movies, as well as it was called. It's not called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, but it's had something like that sort of title. Some show on Netflix that was also supposed to be pretty good that I haven't seen. She also did an amazing job in this movie. She's playing a druid named Doric. And, first of all, the power set's amazing. She can basically change into various types of animals, including, this isn't a spoiler or anything, I'll try to keep spoiler free so more people can see this and be surprised by it. But at some point she becomes an owl bear, which is a really creative use of the power. And having seen that, I'm kind of like, why doesn't every person who plays this game just play as a druid? Because they seem incredibly powerful. We have Hugh Grant. He's the main villain for most of the film. But no surprises here, really. This red witch that you see in the poster here ends up being, the main baddie. But Hugh Grant's doing this incredible, very smarmy, but strangely likable villainous turn. He's just very greedy and he's essentially taken Chris Pine's daughter as his own. Just the basic setup, again, not to get into spoilers too much, but Chris Pine's character essentially started off as kind of a lawful good type. His name's Edgin, and they just call him Ed for short. But essentially he was this, in this order, and, something bad ended up happening, and his family got targeted by other red witches, and kind of his wife was killed, but his daughter was hidden away. So then years later, he put this team together to do various, thief jobs. And the last one kind of went south. He was trying to get this tablet of resurrection, regeneration, to bring his wife back from the dead. But then he and Michelle Rodriguez, who also got caught, ended up spending some time in prison for about 2 years. And this leads to one of the most hilarious scenes, and this is very much is a comedy, which I appreciated. It's not trying to be like super serious, or super dour, or like, R.R. Martin like messed up. It is just trying to be funny and like brisk and like, also very action packed. So yeah, they have this hilarious scene, which I won't spoil, but essentially they get out of prison. And the best part of the scene is, essentially Chris Pine's giving his backstory to this board to try to get parole. And as they are breaking out, the board is basically like, we were going to grant your parole. So making that very unnecessary to break out. We have a very likable young girl actor who's playing his daughter, Kira. And she does a really great job. She's not really in the film that much, but she is very likable, and you can clearly see, how she could be the daughter of these two actors, Chris Pine and the actor who plays his wife briefly, who obviously isn't in the film all that much. We have Daisy Head as Sofina, who's the main, starts off as kind of the advisor to Hugh Grant, but then over the course of the film, you realize she's like incredibly powerful, sorceress, mage, whatever type of thing you want to say. And then I should have said that Justice Smith is also trying to be a sorcerer, but, something's holding him back from realizing his true potential. And Doric is part of this, order that's, trying to take back the land from Hugh Grant's character, who's kind of taken everything and made it horrible. She and her friends are trying to, protect nature. There was kind of an implication that she might have been, at the very beginning of the movie, she's like rescuing this other woman from the order, and it's kind of like, are they a couple? But they never really go into that. And then later in the movie, they have Justice Smith and her kind of flirting, or him flirting with her, but she's not reciprocating. So it's kind of unclear, maybe left intentionally vague. We know that lots of people have problems with these themes, so maybe they didn't want to lean into too much. One thing that I loved about this movie is that they actually use a ton of practical effects. Whenever possible, whenever they have like a creature who's not human, they try to use, practical effects. Like we see bird people, we see like serpent-headed beings. I'm sure Dungeons and Dragons and Magic fans know all the names of these characters, but I don't. I've only really played the game once, and it is really fun. But maybe this will help inspire interest in this. And this genre of home game. So yeah, we see a lot of, heisty sort of things, like the druid uses her powers to kind of get some intel. We see later in the film there's a lot of fun. This isn't really a spoiler because it's very clearly set up, but eventually I should look up the names of the characters, but Justice Smith's character Simon ends up with this stick that's basically like a portal gun from Portal. And they have a lot of fun with that throughout the film. So it's used very well. Michelle Rodriguez gets like one or two really action-packed scenes where, she wasn't ever an MMA fighter as far as I know. I know she got to fame by playing a female boxer in Girl Fight. But she's doing these like really action-y moves where she's like moving like an MMA fighter, just like taking out whole rooms full of these like heavily armored foes. And just looking really good doing it. I like she has this like sleeve tattoos basically, or not a sleeve, but like just a bunch of tattoos on her arms, which look really cool throughout. She ends up with this axe. Again, not really a spoiler, but obviously Hugh Grant kind of turns on them. Originally they're part of the same crew, but he had set them up, and at some point he's going to have them executed by axe. And it's a very funny sequence where they manage to get out of it, and then she ends up with the axe, which is her main weapon throughout the film. Another funny touch is that Chris Pine is kind of a bard at this point, so he's always carrying around this lute and hitting people with his lute. And like at various points they have some fun with him, kind of singing some funny song. So the first half of this film is kind of getting this group of different types of people with very clearly defined motives together. Again, shades of Guardians of the Galaxy. And by the way, I should mention that there is a quick cameo by, of course I'm blanking on the name, but the guy, Bradley Cooper, who plays Rocket Raccoon. He briefly appears in the film. I'm not going to spoil how, but because it's a pretty funny reveal. But it is funny to see him in this movie that's so clearly modeled after something like Guardians of the Galaxy or the Suicide Squad. Um, so yeah, they quickly realize that they have to somehow, liberate the kingdom, and Chris Pine has to get his daughter back. Michelle Rodriguez has kind of like helped co-raise her because she didn't have her mother growing up, obviously. Um, and they have to like explain what happened because Hugh Grant's been lying to his daughter the whole time, and like building up that he's this horrible person to her. And then we see that various other characters, Simon has to prove that he's a competent magician because when we first meet him, he's like doing kind of parlor tricks, like lighting his finger on fire. And we see that Doric is trying to, of course, rescue the land, and Reggie, Reggie Valjean, is that his name? Reggie Jean Page is trying to just like, protect people where he can. He's a very noble character. He isn't in this film really all that much. He's a very important character to the plot of the film, but he's like not really in it that much. He has like one big sequence where he's falling with them, and then he kind of shows up later in the movie, but like he's not really that much in it, I should say. So you kind of, find out the plot of the movie, and it has a lot to do with like kind of deathy magic and trying to raise armies of the dead. Again, not really spoiler stuff because you can clearly see it in the trailer. There's a very funny sequence in the graveyard where they have to like try to find out what happened by interrogating different people who died on the battlefield. They're trying to get this like helmet essentially that will help them, the helmet of disjunction, I think. So again, not to say too much about that because it was a very funny scene. But it doesn't quite go the way they want it to. And a lot of this film has that very like improvisational nature that comes, part and parcel with Dungeons and Dragons, and I really appreciated that. You very much saw kind of the writers like working it out for themselves in the room. Like, okay, here's how a standard movie would go, and then here's how it might get screwed up if people were actually doing a campaign, in real life. Here's like this random like chaos and anarchy we can introduce to this like kind of very normal fantasy template. So every time they do that, it's amazing. They do some really wild stuff throughout the film that, again, not to spoil too much, so you can just like go into it yourself fresh. But eventually they do end up where they need to be to take down the big bad. Again, Hugh Grant does a really good job throughout. I heard there was, some maybe behind the scenes, not controversy, but maybe he's kind of unpleasant, but you wouldn't know that, to see him perform. Again, I kind of alluded this with Chris Pratt in my last review, but you kind of had to separate the performer from the role, even if he is kind of a grouch, as an actor or even as an interviewee. I know he's interviewed about Glass Onion, kind of gave a grouchy response. But he is a great actor and a great, comedic presence, so he does a great job in this movie, too. I will say, maybe towards the last third to the end, Doric doesn't get all that much to do. She kind of disappears for a little bit, but just her look is amazing. Like, she looks like the perfect, like, elfish type, or druid type. I don't even really know what druids are, but I guess they're just, like, another type of magic being. She has, like, these cute little antlers. But she just has this like really great presence, and she plays off of the rest of the team really well. Each character has like a different quality, like sweetness or cunning or fighting prowess, things like this, or just like being incredibly noble, or just being like a cad or a coward or whatever. So yeah, that's all I can really say about the movie without like completely spoiling all the jokes. Which, if you're watching a comedy, you don't want to spoil any of the jokes because that's what a comedy is. But suffice it to say that they all end up in this like stadium, kind of a labyrinth type. It's almost like in Goblet of Fire, the last trial, where they have to like go through this maze with like different enemy types, and there's lots of really deep cut references to different monsters from this universe. And you also hear a lot of like references in the dialogue itself. You hear Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter, and these are, of course, these really big video games that everyone who's a gamer would know and recognize those names. So yeah, if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, definitely see this because you can tell that the writers are big fans. So yeah, they basically had to puzzle their way and like kind of fight their way through this labyrinth, and more things happen in climactic fashion, and I don't think it's spoilers to say it, there's like a big happy ending. But before that, there's like a really great action sequence, again, with the Red Witch. Again, you very much get that Marvel kind of feel of it. And I don't know if it's spoiler or not. It's called Dragons, but there is a dragon in this movie, and the dragon's extremely entertaining. What they do with it, just suffice it to say that it's a kind of a larger dragon. But you also get kind of a stone dragon sort of near the end in that big fight. And a lot of people might complain about these like kind of more generic, archetypical, beats, but it's just so well done. Like I think in other hands, like another writer team or different directors, I think this could have been like the film that people would have feared it is. They're just obviously ripping off this or doing this, or it's just cheesy or corny, or any of these things, or could have been like the original or Dungeons and Dragons movie. But it was kind of like lightning striking. Just this team with this cast, and working through the difficulties of the pandemic, somehow all put together this really amazing film. The CGI isn't perfect. I don't really care. I don't know why people are so obsessed with CGI being perfect. It kind of depends on what the film is. If it's film like this or film like any of those Thor movies, the latter two Thor movies, I don't know what people are so obsessed with the effects. It's just kind of being funny and trying to take the piss out. So even if the CGI isn't completely perfect, it does its job. It's more about like what they do with it. It's all very creative, that I think is impressive. Again, I think the cast is really likable and funny and fun to watch. So I think they did an awesome job in this movie. And I highly encourage, again, everyone to go ahead and check out this movie. I know it didn't do that well in the theaters. Again, I think it kind of had the bad luck of when it released, between these like two massive hits that people weren't really necessarily expecting to be massive hits. This didn't come out like a really long time ago. I think it came out a few weeks ago, and people have already, moved on. But I'm really hoping it finds a lot of success on video on demand and like with word of mouth, because it is a really good movie. Like it's a really good, fun, pretty family friendly movie aside from all the like death magic. But yeah, I think this movie really deserved to do a lot better at the box office, and again, I hope it really does well after the fact, so that we can get a sequel. I'd love to see this cast reunite. I don't know why, because they kind of resolve all the things they need to do in this movie, but just the fact that it has a subtitle kind of implies that they'll do a sequel. So yeah, I can't wait to see if they'll continue this storyline and do something new for the next one. And I just hope that the executives or people at the top can kind of see the quality that's inherent in this movie and the likability of the cast, and just realize that they have gold here, that if they do it again, but advertise it better or like position it better in some way, that they can succeed even like beyond any of these Marvel movies, or at the same level or something like that. So yeah, definitely, if you like any of those Star Trek movies, if you liked it, if you liked some of these other like kind of comedy fantasy movies, like from Marvel or any of the other people, I think you'll really enjoy this. Again, it's like a light, breezy, but kind of dense with lore, but like not in a way that detracts from it. Just like really entertaining tour through this like really wild universe. And I will just say that if you were a guard in this universe, I feel like it'd be terrible, because you can see all the different ways that these guards can be like tricked, or like that magic is used to great effect. Okay, so definitely check this movie out, especially if it's on a streaming app that you have, or check it out on video on demand. And I really hope that a lot of people can see this movie and talk about it, so that we can get a sequel, which will be hopefully just as good, if not better. All right, well, thank you for watching, and follow, like, and subscribe for more content.